You stay in relationships that feel almost right, not because you're happy, but because being alone scares you. Here's the sentence that stops panic decisions. I need a little time before I decide. Say it once. Don't explain. It gives your nervous system room to settle so fear doesn't choose for you. This sentence changes the dynamic, but what you do after saying it is what really matters. That's explained in today's Stoic Focus Lab episode. It's Sunday night, you're on the couch with Netflix half playing, and your phone lights up with a text you've been half expecting. You feel the tightness in your chest before you even read the words. You tell yourself you're fine, but your thumbs are already hovering, ready to type the "it's okay" that keeps the peace and keeps you from being alone. Here's the disruptive question: are you staying because you're loved, or because you're scared of the empty space that would be left if you walked away? I'm going to take tonight to think before I respond. You can send it, or you can say it quietly to yourself. In the next 10 minutes, it stops the panic reply spiral and buys you enough space to breathe, eat, shower, and come back to the conversation like an adult instead of a wounded kid. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. The pain you're living with isn't always loud, but it's constant. You stay in almost right relationships where the affection is inconsistent, the effort is uneven, and the future is always vague. You tolerate little disappointments that stack up, missed plans, unclear commitment, and emotional pull and push, because the alternative feels like a quiet apartment and a weekend that stretches too long. You end up overfunctioning, you initiate the check-ins, you smooth over the weird moments, you raise concerns gently, and you apologize for having needs. At work, your attention fractures, you reread messages, you lose patience faster, and you miss small deadlines. What this is costing you is trust in your own judgment, because you keep proving to yourself that fear gets the final vote. And that's the trap. Fear of being alone doesn't just make you lonely, it makes you negotiable. It makes you accept mixed signals as normal. It makes you call scraps progress. It makes you confuse familiarity with safety. The Stoics warned that you can't control another person's choices, only your own judgment, and that's where you've been losing ground, not because you're weak, but because you've been making decisions while your body is an alarm. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to face the fear of being alone without letting it drive every decision. You'll make clearer choices about who actually deserves a place in your life. You'll feel more solid in yourself whether you're single or partnered, because your stability won't depend on someone else's mood. If you want more grounded lessons that help you stay steady, communicate cleanly, and stop repeating the same relationship patterns, subscribing keeps these tools coming when you need them most. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, you'll learn why the fear of being alone feels like an emergency even when nothing is happening at the moment. Next, you'll get a simple way to slow your reactions so you don't agree to crumbs out of panic. Then, you'll practice how to separate real connection from familiar discomfort, so you stop calling anxiety chemistry. Finally, you'll watch these tools play out in a real, ordinary situation where your old pattern almost takes over, and you'll see exactly what to do instead. Later, we're going to come back to a scene you'll recognize, a late-night apology that doesn't really repair anything, the urge to say no worries, and the temptation to settle just to avoid that hollow feeling after the conversation ends. When we return to it, you'll notice how different it feels when you're not trying to buy security with your silent E. Here's the microscript you're going to use first. Before anything else changes, I need a little time before I decide. Say it out loud if you can. If you can't, say it in your head and act as if you said it. This one sentence creates distance between the feeling and the decision, and that distance is everything. The reason this works is simple. When you're scared of being alone, your nervous system treats relationship uncertainty like a threat. Not a metaphorical one, a real one. Your body wants immediate relief, and relief usually comes from agreement, reassurance, or closeness. So you say yes too quickly. You forgive too fast. You minimize what bothered you. That reaction calms your body for a moment, but it teaches your brain a dangerous lesson: panic gets rewarded. Slowing down interrupts that loop. It tells your system, we're safe enough to wait. And when your body feels safer, your thinking gets cleaner. Picture a familiar North American moment. You're on a weekday lunch break, scrolling your phone, when a message comes in asking to talk later. No context. Your mind fills in the blanks. You start drafting replies in your head, imagining breakups, ultimatums, or emotional labor you're already tired of. The old move is to respond immediately, trying to control the outcome. The new move is to pause and use the script. You don't ghost. You don't escalate. You simply don't rush. And that alone changes the tone of the interaction. Here's a tiny action you can take today. The next time you feel the urge to respond immediately in a relationship, text, call, or in person, wait 10 minutes. Set a timer if you have to. During those 10 minutes, do something physical, stand up, wash a dish, step outside, and stretch your shoulders. The goal isn't distraction, it's regulation. When the timer ends, check in with yourself and ask one question: if I weren't afraid of being alone, what would I say right now? You don't have to say it yet. You just have to notice it. Now take a brief slow practice moment. Put one hand on your chest and one on your stomach. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, pause for 2, and then exhale slowly for 6. Do that twice. As you breathe out, imagine letting go of the urgency to fix, explain, or secure the relationship at this moment. You're not deciding the future tonight. You're just deciding not to panic. What starts to happen when you practice this is subtle but powerful. You begin to notice how often your fear of being alone has been making choices for you. You see how many yes weren't aligned with your values, just with your anxiety. And you realize that pausing doesn't make you colder or less caring, it makes you more honest. The Stoics wrote that distress comes not from events, but from judgments about events, and this pause is where you reclaim that judgment. Remember that open loop we talked about earlier, the quiet evening, the half apology, the urge to smooth things over? This pause is what changes that scene. Instead of reflexively saying, "It's fine," you feel the discomfort, let it pass, and respond from clarity. You don't weaponize silence, but you also don't sell yourself out for comfort. This is the foundation. You're not ending relationships yet. You're not making dramatic declarations. You're building the muscle of not letting fear rush your mouth or your thumbs. And once you can slow down, you're finally in a position to see the relationship as it actually is, not as it feels when you're scared of being alone. You're standing in your kitchen after a long day, the light over the sink buzzing softly, and you're replaying a conversation that didn't quite land. They were distant. Not rude. Not cruel. Just off. And you felt that familiar pull in your chest, the urge to fix it before it turns into something worse. So you filled the silence. You explained yourself. You reassured them. You softened your own point before it could even stand on its own. That's the mistake. You mistake discomfort for danger, and you rush to erase it. When you're scared of being alone, emotional discomfort feels urgent. Silence feels like rejection. Neutral responses feel like withdrawal. So you overcommunicate, overaccommodate, and overapologize. You try to secure the bond by shrinking yourself just a little. And each time you do that, the relationship trains you to carry more than your share of the emotional weight. Here's the correction, and it's deceptively simple. When you notice yourself explaining or justifying your feelings, stop after the first sentence. Not because you're hiding anything, but because clarity doesn't need padding. The script is short. This is what I need right now. No backstory. No apology. No defense. This works because most unhealthy dynamics aren't built on conflict, they're built on imbalance. One person regulates the emotions of both. When you over-explain, you take responsibility for how your needs are received. You try to manage their reaction before it even happens. Psychologically, that keeps you stuck in a child role, seeking permission instead of expressing preference. When you state your need cleanly and stop, you invite the other person to meet you as an equal, or to reveal that they won't. Here's how it might look in a real moment. You're talking about weekend plans, and they suggest something that doesn't work for you. The old pattern is to hedge. It's okay if that's what you want. I just thought maybe we could also. The new move is to say, that doesn't work for me. I need a quieter weekend. Then you stop. You let the silence exist. You don't rush to fill it. If they ask for a follow-up, you answer it. If they don't, you observe. Their response tells you more than any explanation ever could. Try this tiny action today. Notice one place where you normally soften your needs. Pick something low stakes: food, timing, plans. Say your preference once, clearly, and then go quiet. Count 3 breaths before saying anything else. This isn't a power move. It's a self-respect move. You're practicing letting your needs take up space without apologizing for existing. Now pause for a brief pattern interrupt. Drop your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Ask yourself silently, am I trying to be understood, or am I trying to be chosen? If it's the second one, that's fear talking. You don't argue with it. You just don't let it drive. Something interesting happens when you stop over-explaining. You feel exposed at first. Vulnerable. Like you've stepped onto a stage without a script. But then you notice something else: you feel lighter. Less tangled. You're no longer working overtime to manage someone else's comfort. And over time, you start to see the relationship more clearly. People who can meet you will lean in. People who benefited from your self-erasure will resist. This isn't about becoming cold or withholding. It's about letting your words match your reality. The Stoics emphasize that peace comes from aligning your actions with your values, not from controlling outcomes. When you speak plainly and stop, you're practicing that alignment in real time. As we move forward, remember this: slowing down your response helps you stop reacting out of panic. Speaking plainly without over-explaining helps you stop bargaining for connection. In the next part, we're going to stress test this under pressure, when the fear spikes and the stakes feel higher, and you'll see how to hold your ground without turning the moment into a fight or a withdrawal. Here's a belief that quietly keeps you stuck: if you don't hold the relationship together, it will fall apart. That if you stop adjusting, smoothing, or accommodating, everything will collapse, and you'll be alone. This belief feels true under stress, but it isn't. What actually falls apart when you stop overfunctioning is only what was being held up by your fear. The instructions here are clear and uncomfortable. When pressure rises, you do less, not more. You resist the urge to rescue the moment. You let the interaction reveal what it is without your intervention. The stakes are real, because this is where you usually abandon yourself to keep the connection alive. And this is also where you finally learn whether the connection can stand on its own. The script is short and steady: I'm not ready to agree to that. That's it. No explanation. No counteroffer. No emotional cushioning. You're not rejecting the person, you're declining the pressure. And you're doing it without hostility. Imagine a North American moment where this gets tested. It's late evening, you're both tired, and a conversation about the future comes up: commitment, plans, and expectations. They want reassurance right now. The old pattern is to give it, even if you're unsure, because uncertainty feels dangerous. The new response is to slow everything down. You say the script, and you let the silence follow. Your heart rate jumps. Your mind starts offering arguments, promises, and compromises. You don't take the bait. Here's why this works. Under pressure, most people default to old attachment strategies. If yours is to appease, you'll try to earn safety by compliance. But real security isn't built through reassurance, it's built through consistency. When you hold a calm boundary under stress, you send a signal to yourself and the other person: connection doesn't require self-betrayal. Psychologically, this shifts the dynamic from anxiety-driven bonding to reality-based relating. Take a slow practice moment right here. Sit back slightly where you are. Let your spine lengthen. Inhale through your nose, and as you exhale, imagine releasing the urge to prove, promise, or placate. Say silently, I can tolerate this moment. Because you can. The discomfort won't harm you. It will pass, whether the relationship continues or not. What often surprises people is what happens next. Sometimes the other person adjusts. They slow down. They meet you where you are. Other times, they push harder, withdraw, or become dismissive. That's not failure, that's information. You're no longer guessing how safe the relationship is, you're seeing it. This is where many people panic and reverse course. They rush to repair the discomfort they just allowed. But if you do that, you erase the data. You go back to managing instead of observing. Holding your ground for even a few minutes longer than usual is enough to change the pattern. You might notice thoughts like, I'm being difficult, or I'm going to lose them. Those thoughts aren't prophecies. They're echoes of an old survival strategy. The Stoics taught that fear exaggerates outcomes, making imagined losses feel inevitable. Your job here isn't to eliminate fear, it's to not obey it. As promised earlier, we're heading toward a real-life vignette where all of this comes together. A moment where the pressure is subtle but intense, where the old reaction almost takes over, and where these tools actually change the outcome of the night. As you move into that story, keep this in mind: relationships that require you to abandon yourself to survive were never stable to begin with. What you're learning now isn't how to be alone, it's how to stop disappearing just to avoid it. It's a weeknight, later than you planned, and you're sitting on the edge of your bed with your phone in your hand. The room is quiet except for the low hum of traffic outside. You'd had a long day, and all you wanted was a calm evening, but the conversation earlier didn't quite resolve. They'd apologized, sort of. Not for the thing that actually hurt, but in that vague way that sounds cooperative without taking responsibility. Now they've followed up with a message that says, can we just move past this? You feel the familiar pull immediately. The old reaction rises fast: say yes, smooth it over, keep the peace, and avoid another heavy night. You can already imagine how relieved you'll feel if you just let it go. And underneath that relief is the deeper motive you don't like admitting, the fear of being alone with your thoughts if this turns into distance. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard. This is where the pattern usually locks in. You pause. You remember the first tool. You don't answer yet. You set the phone down and stand up, even though part of you wants to keep staring at the screen. You walk to the kitchen, pour a glass of water, and take a slow breath. One hand on your chest, one on your stomach. Inhale, pause, and exhale longer than you inhaled. The urgency eases just enough to think. When you pick the phone back up, you don't rush. You use the pause you practiced. I need a little time before I decide how I feel about that. You send it before you can overthink it. Your heart thumps, but there's also a strange steadiness there. You didn't disappear. You didn't comply. You stayed present. A few minutes pass. The reply comes back slower than usual. Okay. Just that. No emoji. No reassurance. The old version of you would read into it, fill in the silence, and explain more. You feel that impulse now, the urge to add context, soften the edge, make sure they don't pull away. This is where the second tool shows up. You don't over-explain. You don't send a follow-up paragraph about your intentions or your fears. You let the message stand. You notice the discomfort instead of trying to erase it. Your shoulders tense, then gradually drop as you breathe out. Later that evening, they called. The conversation starts cautiously. They ask what's going on for you. You feel the temptation to package your feelings gently, to justify why you were hurt so they won't feel defensive. Instead, you stop after the first clear sentence. I'm not ready to just move past it. I need to feel understood first. You say it calmly. Then you stop talking. The silence stretches. It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. You notice your body wanting to rescue the moment, and you don't. You lean back against the headboard and take another slow breath, reminding yourself you can tolerate this moment. They respond differently than you expect. Not perfectly, but more directly. They acknowledge the specific thing that hurt you. It's not a full repair, but it's closer than usual. And because you didn't rush to reassure them, the conversation stays focused instead of dissolving into vague comfort. At one point, they asked for reassurance about the relationship. This is where the pressure spikes. You feel it again, that old belief that if you don't hold things together right now, everything will fall apart. You recognize it. And instead of giving a promise you're not ready to make, you use the third tool. I'm not ready to agree to anything tonight. Your voice stays even. You're not rejecting them. You're protecting your clarity. The call ends sooner than usual. Not badly. Just unfinished. You hang up and sit there, noticing the quiet. This is the moment you used to fear. Being alone, even briefly, without smoothing everything over. And something surprising happens. You don't spiral. Your body feels calmer than it usually does after these conversations. You brush your teeth, get into bed, and the night doesn't stretch endlessly. You fall asleep without replaying every word. The outcome isn't dramatic. No grand resolution. But you wake up the next morning feeling intact. You didn't abandon yourself. You didn't stay up late managing someone else's emotions. The relationship didn't collapse overnight. And even if it had, you'd know you met the moment with honesty instead of fear. This is what applying the tools looks like in real life. Not perfection. Not control. Just a calmer night, a boundary held, and the quiet confidence that you can face being alone without trading away your self-respect to avoid it. What you've really been practicing through this lesson is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting happens fast. It feels urgent, necessary, and right now. But it usually scatters you. It makes you chase reassurance, patch over discomfort, or agree to things you don't truly mean, just to quiet the fear. Responding is slower. It's intentional. It doesn't mean you're emotionless or detached. It means you let your emotions show you what's there without letting them drive the car. When you stop reacting just to avoid being alone, you stop outsourcing your stability to someone else's presence, tone, or mood. First, we created space so fear couldn't rush your decisions before you even realized you were deciding. You practiced pausing long enough for your nervous system to calm down and for your mind to stop making up worst-case stories. Then we tightened your communication so you could state a need without over-explaining, apologizing, or trying to manage how it lands. Next, we stress-tested the skill where it matters most, under pressure, when the moment feels like it could slip away, and your old pattern tries to save the connection by sacrificing your clarity. Finally, we watched how this plays out in real life, in that quiet night scene where the old reaction almost took over, where you could have smoothed it over, accepted the vague apology, and gone to bed with that familiar hollow feeling, but instead you held your ground and your body calmed down. You didn't win a power struggle. You just stopped abandoning yourself to avoid the possibility of being alone. Now here's how you make this usable today, not someday. You're going to take exactly 3 actions, and none of them require a dramatic conversation or a breakup speech. The first step is one deliberate pause. Within the next 24 hours, choose one relationship moment where you'd normally respond fast: text, call, we need to talk, an apology, a request for reassurance, and insert a 10-minute delay on purpose. Put your phone down and do something physical in those 10 minutes. Wash a dish, take out the trash, step outside, stretch your neck, and drink water. The point is to teach your body that waiting doesn't equal danger. Then, when you return, respond with one clean sentence. Not a paragraph. One sentence that reflects your actual state instead of your fear. You're not trying to be mysterious. You're practicing leadership over your own reactions. The second step is one clear need stated once. Today, you will express a preference or need without justification. Something simple is fine: I need a quieter night, or that doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that. Say it calmly, then stop. Notice the impulse to explain. Notice the impulse to soften it into a question. Don't do it. Let your words stand long enough to hear the other person's response. This is where you discover reality. People who can meet you will engage. People who relied on your self-erasure will push, guilt, or withdraw. Either response gives you clarity. You're not forcing an outcome, you're allowing the truth to show itself. The third step is one tolerated discomfort without forced closure. Before you go to sleep tonight, check whether you've been trying to fix something emotionally so you can rest. If there's tension with someone, resist the urge to patch it just to quiet your anxiety. That doesn't mean you ignore problems. It means you stop demanding a neat ending on a schedule fear chooses. Take 2 slow breaths, inhale 4, pause 2, exhale 6, and remind yourself you can tolerate an unfinished moment. The goal is not coldness. The goal is self-respect. When you can sleep without forcing closure, you're proving to yourself that being alone for a few hours is survivable, and that proof is how fear loses authority. And notice what these steps are really doing. They're not teaching you how to leave. They're teaching you how to stay honest. They're teaching you how to stop making promises you can't keep just to keep someone close. They're teaching you that your needs don't require an essay to be valid. Over time, this changes your entire relationship standard. Instead of asking, "How do I make this work?" you start asking, "Is this actually working for me?" And that question is the beginning of peace. There's also a quieter shift that happens when you practice this. You start feeling more solid when you're alone. Not because you suddenly love solitude, but because you're no longer using another person's presence as the proof that you're safe. You become safer to yourself. That's the real goal. The Stoics were clear about one thing: you can't control what others do, you can only control what you choose and how you interpret what happens. When you stop negotiating against yourself, you stop treating fear like a boss. You treat it like weather, real, uncomfortable, temporary. If you want to keep building this skill, the next lesson to watch should be about boundaries under emotional pressure, how to say no without turning it into a fight, and how to stay warm without becoming compliant. A good follow-up title is "Boundaries Aren't Walls: How to Say No Without Pushing People Away," because it takes what you learned here and shows you how to hold your line in real conversations, family, dating, work, without over-explaining and without shutting down. And here's the final truth to carry with you: being alone is uncomfortable, but losing yourself is more expensive. Fear will always try to convince you that settling is safer than solitude. But the calm you want doesn't come from never being alone, it comes from knowing you can handle it, and choosing relationships from clarity instead of panic. When you can pause, speak plainly, and tolerate discomfort, you stop clinging to almost right. You start building a life where being with someone is a choice, not a rescue. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.